Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. This is week number 41, and I noticed the calendar tells us that the Feast of Hanukkah is going to be coming up on December 11th. And I thought I'd just mention to everyone, our Jewish neighbors are going to celebrate the Feast of Hanukkah, and they light 8 candles every day for an 8-day period. So for 8 days, they're lighting candles, 8 candles every day for 8 days. And it commemorates the rededication of the temple in Jerusalem 165 years before Christ. So when you meet your Jewish friends during this week, you might wish them a happy Hanukkah. For today, I'd like to suggest that we consider something carefully because we're into holiday season now and a festive season. We're in the month of December, and I know spirits are high, and certainly the young people are looking forward to gifts, receiving and giving gifts. So I'd like to have us focus on something. December, people focus on specific holidays, and I'd like to focus on something specifically for each of us that I think is important, especially if you've been listening to the last 40 weeks of our radio broadcast. So imagine if during the day there was a very soft-sounding bell that rang every once in a while during the day. Let's say it rang 3 times during the day on average, and let's call it a twinkle sound, like that song Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. If you Google what is a twinkle sound, you'll hear a very whispery kind of a bell sound. So if that happened 3 times a day, every day, and it happened for 10 years, ask yourself if you would even be paying attention to it 3 times a day. It only lasts less than a second. And if it's happening every day, 3 times a day, many people tell us they're so busy, their lives are so busy, they probably would, after 5 years or so, maybe 10 years, they'd stop paying attention to it. And yet it might be a very significant thing that's happening, this little tiny twinkle bell. And I'd like to propose to you and suggest to you that in each of our lives there are things like this. You may hear a little twinkle bell. Somebody else may see some other kind of a clue. But there are these little tiny things that happen during our day. And if we notice them, they can bring us great joy. if we don't notice them, we lose out on all of the benefits. Now let's calculate just for a moment. If we got this twinkle sound, let's say, it's very brief, quick, very soft, nobody would hear it but you. The twinkle sound would need to be right next to your ear. If another person was in the room, they would not hear your twinkle bell. They might hear their own twinkle bell, but it's that soft. It's sounding right next to your ear, and it's very quiet. Now, if that happened 3 times a day, then in 1 year, 365 days times 3 times, that would amount to 1,000 times a year. And after 5 years, it'd be 5,000 times. 10 years, it'd be 10,000. 20 years, it'd be 20,000 times you've heard this twinkle sound. And you've been busy with some things, and you've been in meetings and wherever you're at, movies, etc. So you're busy many times when it's happening. Now, what if that sound was when God made us, God intended to let us know when He's in the room, when He's passing by? The Bible calls it the time of your visitation, the time when you are visited by God. So let's say every time God is focusing on you, paying attention to you, or wanting you to notice something, he makes this very soft-sounding twinkle bell sound, and it's happening 3 times a day. And like we said, in 20 years, it would be 20,000 times because He's visiting, He's present everywhere. And so the sound means it's not that He really arrived, but He's paying attention and trying to get your attention. But let's call it arriving and departing. So every time you hear this bell, you should recognize the fact that God is in the room, or God is paying attention to you, or He wants you to notice Him. So you can answer this question for yourself. What would happen after 1 year, 10 years, 20 years? Would you stop paying attention? Would you just ignore it and say, well, I know He's always here, and He's just letting me know He's here, and then go on with the rest of your life? Or would you perk up and say, okay, Lord, what do you want me to notice? Why did you do that? I'm supposed to pay attention to something, maybe what somebody's telling me, or maybe what I'm thinking, or maybe where I'm going, or maybe I'm supposed to ask you something. So that bell is going off because you want me to pay attention to something. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, you may have other things instead of a twinkle bell going off. For example, you might see the number 555, or somebody else might see the number 111. 777, etc. Now, I've been noticing clues for 50 years now. That's 1 year more than 49. And I've been noticing in my life and the lives of other people. And I noticed that many people have different kinds of signs. Some see a certain kind of a bird. Some think of a certain song. Some do hear some bell sound. Some see the number 111, etc., etc. So I know there are people who are seeing these visitations of God, these clues that God is in the room many times during their lives, and they pay attention, they perk up, and that's where we get stories of coincidence miracles. They perk up, they pay attention, and they notice a miracle. So I want to encourage you for the next week to look for what's happening in your life. Are you getting twinkle sounds, or are you having a favorite song of yours comes into your mind and you start humming it, or you're in your mind, you're singing it in your mind, or does an old fond memory occur to you often during the week? So see what's repetitive and see what's happening in your life, because when you spot that, you're going to spot the moments where perhaps, I'm pretty sure of this from 50 years experience, but I think perhaps you'll notice these times when God is trying to get your attention. Now, many people say when I get into it this long, into this discussion, well, why doesn't God just enter the room and say, hello, I'm here? Or why doesn't God say something? Well, that's because of free will, and I've explained that many times, and you can Google the term God's free will. But what it means is God gave us free will, the ability to want to speak to Him, to want to notice Him, or not to, or decide when you want to pray instead of Him telling you what time you should pray. So you have free will to pray or not, to talk to Him or not, and you have free will to ask Him to enter the room. So I think the bottom line for a person who's saying, well, why doesn't God just talk to me? The answer is, well, just ask Him a question and He will talk to you. So that doesn't stop. You can ask Him. And in addition to talking to Him and asking Him questions and asking Him to speak to you, inspiring you, he may be doing these other things, sending you clues during the day. Now, what happens when you see the clues? Well, if you're in tune with, if it's a twinkle bell sound, or if you're seeing a certain number, 444, 555, or 111, or whatever, you're humming a certain song, like you're the wind beneath my wings. Sometimes that song comes to my mind often during the week. You're the wind beneath my wings, suggesting that God is the wind beneath my wings that gives me flight, and I can fly like an eagle. And that's all a biblical story. It's in the Bible. But what happens is you get great joy and you get great peace, because suddenly your best friend is telling you, I'm in the room, I'm watching you, or I'm here, or notice what just happened. And we get courage, and we make great decisions. Like we'll be trying to solve a problem, and we think, should I do that? And the bell will go off. You say, wow, interesting. And they say again, should I do that? And the bell goes off again. So my point to you is, find this common place where God is showing you He's in the room, He's in your life. Often for me, I'll wake up before the alarm goes off in the morning. I'll wake up before the alarm goes off, and I'll turn my head and look at the time, and as I look at the clock, the alarm actually rings. And for me, that's a time of God's visitation. It's been happening for many, many years. It doesn't happen every morning, but when it happens, I know that's God saying, He's saying good morning to me before the alarm goes off, because the alarm was going to wake me up anyway, and that way He's not usurping my free will. All right, so I'm encouraging you to look for your signs and your clues, and I hope while you're doing this, you'll enjoy the things that are happening to you during the week. I'd like to share a miracle story with you from one of our listeners. They told me the story about how they were married at the age of 24, and they were only married 3 months, and the woman who was talking to me, she discovered that she had cancer, and it was a certain kind of a cancer which affects females. And she went to the doctor, and they talked about potentials and possibilities, and she was only married 3 months, mind you. She just finished really just having her honeymoon, and now she finds out that she has this serious problem with cancer. And so she decided to go through the chemotherapy process to hopefully be cured. And she went through that process. I think it sounded like it went on for a little bit more than a year, and she did survive, and there was remission of the cancer. And then a few years later, she had a child, and when she went to the doctor said, it's not possible that you're pregnant. That treatment you received during that cancer treatment has a whole history of people who have had that treatment are not able to give birth. And so she was so delighted to hear about it. She never knew initially when she went through the chemotherapy that was one of the side effects. So she had a child, and then she did have another child. So in her mind, every time she sees her children, it reminds her of, can you imagine how depressed she was, married 3 months, and gets cancer right after her honeymoon, and how depressed she was for quite a period of time. And now her 2 children remind her, every time that she sees those 2 children, she's reminded of the miracle of her cure. You see, God is so good to us. He gives us these little memory aids to remind us of His visitation. So I thought I'd share that with you, and hopefully that will bring you some joy. And you can share it with some of your friends who are having bad days. It's good for them to hear about the possible miracles from God that we all can receive when we ask Him for help. God bless you all, and I will talk to you again next week. And please do share miracle stories with your friends, because there are a lot of people out there having struggles, and when they hear about your miracle stories, that gives them great hope. And that's what God wants us to do. Psalm number 105 in the Bible says to do that. Share the glories of God. It builds up the whole family of God. All right. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.